in a couple seconds. Welcome to today's webinar. This is Jim Butler from Club Benchmarking, and we're going to talk about from insight to action and how we utilize member and staff feedback to drive continuous improvement. One of our learning objectives today is we're going to look at it through surveying and from satisfaction. We're going to talk about motivation. One of the exciting things in our research is why people join clubs, and we've broken it down into internal motivation and external motivation, and we're going to examine that from both a practical standpoint in a club and how important that is to also the research that we have seen. Many of you are considering capital improvement plans. There was a great article last week in the Naples Daily News in the Florida market, but we see it across the country where clubs are looking at capital improvement programs, and one of those capital improvement programs must be able to sell memberships when you invest in the club, and we'll look at why people join clubs. We're going to look at something that you may have looked at before, which is member attachment. We had a meeting this morning with one of the organizations, and we really looked at how important that attachment is and how that leads to loyalty. And we'll talk about historically in the club business, we talked about satisfaction, and I'll make the point that loyalty and having loyal members is even more important than satisfaction, and how member attachment helps bridge the gap in terms of creating member loyalty and how you'd look at that from a continuous improvement program. One of the things that we want to do when we survey our members is we'd like to get both quantitative information and qualitative information. Quantitative information is the numbers, and we use a 7-point Likert scale here at Club Benchmarking for most of the surveying we do. And just a point on that, compared to a 5-point Likert scale, many times people on a 5-point where 3 is neutral, and if we use 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that's the scale, and 3 is neutral, there's only one number between 3 and 5, which 5 being the top score. So many times people answer 4. If you go to a 7-point scale, where the neutral, where you go 1, 2, 3, 4 being neutral, 5, 6, and 7, you give people a chance to give you more information because there's more responses available between the neutral score and the high score, or between the low score and the neutral score. There is research out there on a 10-point scale that the 7-point scale is better. Many survey companies would debate that, but we at Club Benchmarking have decided on using the 7-point scale. Now, why do you do satisfaction surveys? One of the things that you want to look at in our industry is that we're pretty good at doing satisfaction. And the reason that you do satisfaction surveys is that you'd like to know how your members feel about your goods and your services. And as you get that, one of the things that we do, we see a lot of people take the surveys, but they're not quite sure how to turn those into action plans and into their business plans. We like to do the satisfaction surveys, and we would like to turn those, we'd like to group those. When you do your satisfaction surveys, you want to make sure that you spend an appropriate amount of time and make sure that you include your staff on those so that they can tie those into their business plans. And then you also want to share those results with your members. This is an academic point of view on satisfaction, and we've done a lot of work with Iowa State and Sojung Lee, who's a consumer behavioral specialist. And satisfaction is very complicated, and I put this up here just to show you how complicated it is from a research standpoint. And the couple points here, when you look at the top left, from desired expectations, satisfaction is impacted by the expectation that you have. And I'll give you a concrete example on that. If you're on the road and you were considering utilizing hotels, and you're going to look at a Motel 8 or a Ritz-Carlton, you would have an expectation from a Motel 8 that is different than the expectation from the Ritz-Carlton. So if you're doing a satisfaction survey and the Motel 8 scored the same from a satisfaction survey than a Ritz-Carlton, are those two scores the same score? And I think we all would realize that they're not the same score because the expectation level would be different on the Motel 8 than it would be on the Ritz-Carlton. So expectations have a lot to do with satisfaction scores. And then at the bottom of the screen is the predicted expectation of if you've actually utilized the goods or services. So if your members have utilized the club and they're not brand new members, they have a certain expectation. And the one thing that we hear in the club business that makes us all cringe is when the member comes to the club with a guest and does not have an experience that they expected from based on past expectations, and they use the terminology where they have a bad experience or are not satisfied, where they say, I'm embarrassed because I had guests as they came in here. And that's a good example of a past experience. We had set the expectation with them and we did not meet that expectation. And that's way different than a person that has no experience with your club or your brand. So the basic thing in satisfaction is that there are things that influence satisfaction. Expectation is certainly one of those, but there's other things that impact customer satisfaction. When we look at the expectation, we can look at our past experience, we can look at the word of mouth, and especially in the club business, word of mouth is very important to us, especially in terms of people joining our clubs. And then we also have the traditional marketing that sets the expectation in terms of the satisfaction. We measure that against the performance, and when the expectation is less than the performance, that's when we have a satisfied customer or a satisfied member. So it's very important that we set that expectation up, because obviously customer satisfaction is a goal and a major factor in the club's success. Now, if we take that same exact situation and the expectation is greater than the performance, then we have dissatisfaction, and that's when we have a problem. But I will tell you that dissatisfied members are not necessarily disloyal members, and we'll talk about that as we go through that. The point is, satisfaction is complicated, and I want to challenge you in terms of when you do your business plans and you look at continuous improvement in the club, one of the things that we want to do is understand some of the other inputs that you need to measure, and I'll give you some concrete examples about how to do that so you can take that to your club. Now, one of the things that impacts satisfaction is motivation. And one of the things that you want to do is try to understand what motivates your members to engage in the club. And one of the discussions that you need to have at your club is, why are people members of your club and what are your competitive advantages? And the importance of that is, does your club provide the right package to satisfy your members? Or why are your members members of the club? And I had some of the times in life you learn things with simple questions, and So Jung Lee had asked me why members joined our club in Florida, and I told her the reasons that I thought that they did, and that was golf, beautiful property, and she asked if I could send the report to her, and needless to say, I didn't have any data to support why my members were joining our club. Now, we've done extensive research, and it's far more common that people don't have that information and they do have information on why. But I want to give you a little bit different perspective on why members join clubs, and we're going to use Simon Sinek to do that. And I ask you, turn up your audio on this because it's playing off my computer. So turn up your audio as you go forward, and let's listen to Simon here on, let's start with why.
What I discovered that regardless of their size and regardless of their industry, every single one of these organizations with the capacity to inspire, they all think, act, and communicate the exact same way. And it's the complete opposite to everyone else. All I did was write it down. And it's probably the world's simplest idea. I call it the golden circle. Imagine, if you will, 3 concentric circles, a bullseye. In the middle is the word why, the center ring is the word how, and the outside ring is the word what. It's this little idea that distinguishes those with the capacity to inspire versus everyone else. Let me define the terms really quickly, starting from the outside in. Every single organization on the planet knows what they do, because the products you sell or the services you offer. Some know how they do it, whether you call it your differentiating value proposition or your USP or your proprietary process. It's the things that you think make you special or different or better than your competition. But very, very few people and very, very few organizations can clearly state why they do what they do. And by why, I don't mean to make money. That's a result. By why, I mean what's your purpose, what's your cause, what's your belief? Why does your company exist? Why did you get out of bed this morning? Why should anyone care? As a result, the way we think, the way we act, the way we communicate is from the outside in. It's obvious. We go from the clearest thing to the fuzziest thing. We tell people what we do, we tell them how we're different or how we're better, and we expect some sort of behavior, a purchase, a vote, support. But not the inspired leaders, not the inspired organizations. Regardless of their size, regardless of their industry, every single one of them thinks, acts, and communicates from the inside out. They all start with why. Let me give you an example. I use Apple a lot because they're easy to understand and we all get it. If Apple were like everyone else, a piece of marketing from them, for example, would sound like this. They would say what they do. We make great computers. How do they do it? They're beautifully designed, simple to use, and user-friendly. Want to buy one? That's normal. That's how most organizations talk to us. Here's our new car. It's got tinted windows, get great gas mileage, leather seats. Choose us. Here's our law firm. Our lawyers went to all the best schools. We won all of our cases. Choose us. Not the inspired leaders, not Apple. They start with why. Here's how they actually communicate. Everything we do, they say, we believe in challenging the status quo. We believe in thinking differently. The way we challenge the status quo is by making our product beautifully designed, simple to use, and user-friendly. We just happen to make great computers. Want to buy one? Totally different. What I discovered.
Now, isn't that tremendous? Every time I see that video, let's relate it to the club. If I asked you why your members are members, most people would give me the answer because of our beautiful golf course, or because of our beautiful yacht basin, or because of the beautiful dining room, right? But that's not your why, right? Those are your amenities. You have to really understand why your members join the club. And then, does it align with your staff? And why is your staff members working so hard for your members? And we'll talk about that as we come in, but it's very important that think about what Simon said there is, if I went to every member and every staff member in your club, could they give me in a simple sentence why you exist? And if the answer to that is no, I want you to really consider that and take it back to your staff, take it back to your members, and really write down the why of you exist. And I will tell you, it's the why is not the facilities, it's not the location, and it's not the weather, right? There's a thing called push-pull. We've all heard of push-pull. And push-pull was developed through research. And in terms of our members, the push factors are socializing. It might be to improve their health. It might be to relax and escape. It might be because they want to do business. And then as we look forward, we call this the push factors, and then the club goes to the pull factors, which are the amenities of the club, the facilities, the location, the reputation, the events, right? So once you understand those push factors from a member, then the club can market as you go forward, utilizing the pull factors as we go forward. Now, the push factors are internal to the individual members. And what I want and challenge everybody to do from a continuous improvement standpoint is each member that comes in, try to understand what their push factors are. You know, it's a psychological need. Many times there's psychological motivations. They want to relax, they want to explore, they want that social interaction, and it's very powerful if you can understand what those push factors are. And imagine the club that you can have when you can take your marketing department and find out the internal motivation of your members, and then market to that internal motivation. You'll have people show up for events based on what they want and based on what their motivation is. Consider, for example, staffing. When we first did our research, 92% of the people felt like the friendly nature of the staff was very important when selecting a club. Are your staff involved when you tour people around your club? If they're not, I would ask you to reconsider that and reconsider what that friendly nature is. We know 85% are looking for rest and relaxation. What kind of image is your staff members and the other members of the club giving that person that wants relax? Do they come up? Do you have time to talk to them? Do staff members have time to talk to them, or do you feel rushed? And then 92% of the clients are seeking to socialize with other members. We're social animals. So the social events in our clubs are every bit as important. And I would challenge you to look at your website. The picture that's up on the screen is of a club, and you can see that the folks are enjoying themselves, that the members are enjoying themselves. And we've looked at websites of clubs across the country, and many times there aren't any pictures of the members or the associates having fun. And we know that over 90% of the people are there to socialize with other people. Look at your marketing program, look at your website. Are you going after that internal motivation, or do you just have the amenities focused up front? People do not join club only for amenities. They join clubs because of that. Now, that's not to say external motivation is not important. Here's a picture of Disney. You go up and you look at that. Facilities and climate, the beach and the environment, all of those things are very, very important, but internal motivation happens before external motivation. So how do you do that? Some of the external motivations would be, we know that casual dining has really taken on great significance. It's over 85% of the people that we have surveyed see that that's very important. Landscaping and aesthetics. If you said that landscaping and aesthetics in many of the clubs is more important than the golf or the clubhouse, we were surprised the first time we've seen that. We've done that across the country now, and it's very important. You know, go to your landscape staff and show them that statistic, to use that as motivation for your staff of how important they are for people that are joining your club. I don't think most landscape people understand how important their job is and what they do. And take a moment when you're handing out paychecks on Friday and show them the stat, because we understand how important that landscaping is to the team. So what's important is that in your club, you understand what those internal motivations are and you understand what those external motivations are. And I want you to measure that. And I want you to know that for every single member that comes in. That's not one line on the membership application about why you joined. It's write down what those are. We can help you do that if you need any help on that, and then start to measure why your members are joining your club. Put that in your CRM system, and then you can target market those as you go forward. Now, knowing what motivates them, how does that equate to satisfaction? Well, there's a missing link between motivation and satisfaction. And what do you think that is? Well, for those of you that guessed, that it's value, you would be right on that. And we know that our members measure value differently. The traditional equation is the cost benefit of value, but we also know that there's some other things on that. What are some of the factors that determine overall value? And the way that members describe value impacts satisfaction. And we also know that motivation impacts value. But value is more than price. There's other factors to do that, and not all members describe value. So if I was going to ask you, what are some of the ways that you would use to measure value? Well, we've looked at it from, and we've done our research, and up on the screen, there's 6 different points of value of describing value. Some members describe value by quality. You know, is it dependable and consistent and reliable? Some do it emotionally, and our research indicates that the emotional value in terms of the areas is actually the highest scoring in the club and has a lot to do with member loyalty. We do the traditional monetary value of, you know, are the fees and the dues, and there's obviously specific areas that we can look at in the monetary, such as the joining fee and the user fees. The behavioral value is information readily available? Is it easy to join the club? Many times clubs today, members do not feel like going in front of the membership committee and being judged, especially by somebody that is older for our younger members. So we've seen that across the board. Reputational value is very important. When a member joins your club, are they proud to tell other people in the community that they belong to your club, or is that something that they wouldn't say in the community? And as organizations and clubs, everybody knows that we're passionate about the value that our clubs bring to our communities, both in jobs and in terms of the charity work that we do. And then finally, value is also measured socially in terms of it gives me social approval. My friends are in the club, so I create great value. So value is something that is measured not only by money, but by other areas, and is very important because if you understand how your members measure value, it does impact satisfaction. The other thing that impacts satisfaction is service quality. And in research, there's 5 different areas that lots of the other industries have used. And it's tangible, reliable, responsible, assuredness, and empathy. And you can measure service quality across the areas with these 5 different constructs to help measure satisfaction as we go forward. So to summarize that, motivation impacts satisfaction. If you can understand your members' motivation, you're more than likely to have a better insight into satisfaction. So if you're just traditionally doing a satisfaction survey, I would tell you that you're not getting all the information that you potentially can get. Secondly, we know that motivation impacts value, and value and service quality directly impact satisfaction. And that's very important to understand that, because then you can begin to understand satisfaction through the lens of your members as you go forward. Now, does a satisfied member equal a loyal member? Or the opposite of that, does a dissatisfied member equal a disloyal member? I will tell you from my experience that many times the members that were dissatisfied were some of my most loyal members, and a lot of times members that were satisfied were not loyal to the club. And the impact of that is very important, because at the end of the day, we would like to create loyal members. Now, satisfied members in many times is a requirement for loyalty, and extreme satisfaction does develop extremely loyal members. But the other side of that is also true, which is take advantage of your dissatisfied members, because we can not only utilize that information for continuous improvement, but if you listen to your members and you take that satisfaction and you can improve that satisfaction, you can improve your member loyalty. And which one of those would you rather have? Would you rather have a satisfied member or a loyal member? What's more important to you and what's more valuable to you? Member satisfaction versus membership loyalty is different. Membership satisfaction is a measure of their overall club experience, and whether it's positive, you can equate it against other restaurants and or golf clubs or social experiences that they have, and obviously we can do the overall member satisfaction. Member loyalty allows for positive word of mouth. Member loyalty allows for people to really connect with your club, and member loyalty allows a club to be more profitable. We've all heard of the Net Promoter Score, and we're doing some research on the Net Promoter Score. And would your members recommend your club to other folks? We know in the word of mouth, the recommendations in the club industry is very important. And the Net Promoter Score is actually a loyalty question. And loyalty is defined as a feeling or attitude devoted to attachment and affection. And we know what loyalty is in the club business. The benefit of that is obviously it reduces your marketing cost. It decreases your price sensitivity. So the stronger loyalty, you can raise both your user fees and you can raise your initiation fees. You can create capital dues income for the club, and you turn a member into a partner. Now, the managerial importance to that is we all talk about the 80-20 rule, and 20% of your customers produce 80% of your revenue. And we know the majority of those 80-20 customers are loyal customers. There's a lot of research that talks about that an existing customer is way less expensive than the cost of acquiring a new customer, which can be up to 5 times more. And we know the significance of sharing positive word of mouth in the club industry. With the social media happening around the world, we also know the importance of bad reviews online and how are we going to deal with that in the club. Now, retention in the club, from the research that we do, general rule of thumb is between 5 and 10% of your members will leave each year. And I'm going to relate this back to your budget. A 5% increase in member retention can increase your profits by 100%. Now, that may be not make sense to you, but let's say that the majority of clubs in our database are not-for-profit clubs, and their NOI at the end of the day is somewhere around break even. If the average club has 300 to 500 members, and let's use 500 members to make the math easy, and they lose 10% of their members, they would lose 50 members a year. If you can decrease that to 5%, which would be losing 25 members, then the club would have a net gain of 25 members per year. We know the average spend in a club is around $10,000 between dues and user fees. So if we look at that example and we took 25 members times $10,000, that would be a $250,000 savings for a club on a yearly basis in terms of that. And that doesn't even account for the direct costs of new member recruitment. You can go through the math on your own club. Again, just look at your the number of members that you're using a year, divide it by the number of members you have at the beginning of the year, and come up with what your attrition. But in each of our business plans, from a continuous improvement standpoint, we need to drive that number down. Now, why don't all satisfied members become loyal members? And there's many reasons for that, but it's because of a weak bond and attachment through our research that we see. And attachment comes out of the academic world, and it's in a strong attachment or bond to your club can happen both with your brand, it can happen with your place attachment, which is how does it make people feel. It can also happen because of your amenities that you have, or it might be because of what the elements of that your club are involved in. There's 4 areas in research of attachment, and this is probably a new concept to you. So let me take a second and just walk through those. There's a thing called place identity, which is, are the personal values reflected at the club? We know many times that there's been clubs that have been publicized over the last year that they start a mission to help other people, for example. It might be the Habitat for Humanity homes that you're building in your area. It might be the breast cancer. It might be the lung cancer. It might be the Heart Association. But many times people identify with the club and its causes, and we know that that's very significant in terms of developing loyalty. Secondly is the dependence. First, dependence, as we know, generally club members live within 7 miles of the club. A lesser extent live between 7 and 15 miles, and very few members live outside of the 15 area. So you have a thing called the place dependence in terms of where the club is located. We also have an attachment based on social bonds, about creating those magical family memories. Especially as we come up on Thanksgiving, we get the opportunity to really drive attachment. And one of the opportunities you have is with family units, can you create those magical family moments where we can look at each other and love each other and come together with the family and really create strong bonds? And if you can do that at the club and provide that for your members, that is a very powerful thing. In Florida, many times, if you can get the grandkids coming to the club during spring break or during the holidays, I promise you that that'll help your retention and create loyal members. Up north, it's the father-son events, it's the legacy memberships that you can have, it's the attachment between the staff and the members that really create magical attachment and loyalty. And then obviously how the club makes people feel. You can develop a strong sense of belonging to the club. There's an emotional aspect to that from an attachment standpoint. And the reason that that is very important is we have studied this, that attachment is very critical to building loyalty. Satisfaction is not enough in terms of the research that we have. You have to have some attachment to that. And that's where that attachment, being able to describe and measure your attachment by the club, is very important. So when we talk about developing this loyalty, loyalty is developed through attachment. And one of the continuous improvement areas that we would like to do is really drive that attachment home. So find out from your members why they join the club, how they measure value, are they satisfied, what gets them attached, and that will help you develop loyalty. And many of the clubs that we work at, that's a new concept in terms of attachment, but you'll see it mentioned many times in research about how important, and that's the business that we're in. We're trying to create a culture at our clubs to really create those magical family memories, to help our kids learn how to play our sports. You can, help people in their time of need, and we're all obviously social animals where we're dependent upon each other. We're very proud of our communities, and it's through that attachment that we really strengthen the loyalty bond. So when we look at our loyalty model, loyalty is developed through a process of understanding why members join your club. How do your members describe value? How would you describe value? What do you think the club values and determines value? We look at our service quality. Are we delivering the service quality? And those two factors impact satisfaction and describe satisfaction. When we look at satisfaction, we not only have the transactional satisfaction of our amenities, but we also have the global satisfaction based upon what our expectations were. Had we already used the product? Are we bringing guests to the club? Those relationships and those experiences are different, and it's important to understand that and anticipate that in our club. Do you look at the T-sheet? Do you look at the dining reservations? Do you look at your committee members in terms of trying to drive that satisfaction based on those expectations, based on the motivation? So have a more global view of what satisfaction is. Then the plus there, the attachment. Have we looked at our attachment to the club? Do you have difficult members that you've assigned a staff member to help build membership loyalty? That's an effective strategy that we've used in the past, where you have a member that is not attached to the club. It's very important that you look at it from a 30-day, a 60-day, a 90-day. You look at the usage patterns within the club and assign members to people that potentially would leave the club and try and develop that loyalty, because as we know, the loyal members will spread the word of mouth as we go forward. I also think this is very important to the new members that join the club, because we know from a recommendation standpoint, the longer members are at the club, the less likely they are to have a circle of friends to join the club. A brand new member that comes to the club is more likely to recommend their friends and family and business associates to the club. So this is very important that you utilize the loyalty model to measure their loyalty, to measure their motivation in order to get them to recommend the club. This is the particular loyalty model that we use. I just put that up there to show you the array of areas and how it works as you go through loyalty. So if you start on the left side, up in the top left, we have the service quality areas there with the various aspects of that. We talk about value, we talk about satisfaction, attachment, loyalty, and all of those yellow boxes are the individual questions that we look at as we come through there. So as we go through the loyalty model and we look at the loyalty model, one of the things that we want to do is really understand what impacts satisfaction. And if we work backwards on satisfaction, satisfaction by itself is great, but I want you to reconsider how you do your satisfaction surveys and your information. I want you to look at motivation. I want everybody to take away today and go back to their desk and write down the reasons why they join, why your members join your club. Put those into two different buckets. The first bucket is the internal motivation. Internal motivation generally comes before external motivation. Why are people joining your club? Look at that Simon Sinek video and really understand your why. If you can understand your why, go to your website, go to your marketing material, and see if the why impacts how you would present yourself to your members and to the world. Additionally, make sure your staff members understand what the why is, and there's also the why of why your staff members work at your club. If you can align those missions to your members, that will help you come up with satisfied members. Additionally, we want to look at value. We talked about value as you go forward. There's different components of value, and one of the most exciting research projects that I think we have going forward is being able to describe our membership value in terms of our members as we go forward. Value impacts satisfaction. If you don't understand how members describe value, you'll have a hard time explaining what the satisfaction scores are. And then the new concept that you may not have heard of, which is member attachment. Member attachment is very important, and there's 4 components to member attachment, and we can actually measure member attachment, which all results in determining member loyalty as we go forward. The one thing on surveys that we want to talk about is continuous improvement, and if you continuously improve, that implies that you're taking measurements throughout the year. We believe that the continuous improvement program and the original scores that you would get in surveying are important, but what's more important is that you do it on a continuous basis and what your trend lines are. Many managers choose not to survey because in many instances we see that they're afraid of what the answers are because they would feel like that if the scores aren't good, that would be held against them. And I want to help you overcome that fear, because as managers, what we're trying to do is get on a continuous involvement standpoint. And unless you understand how your members are looking at motivation and value and satisfaction and attachment and loyalty, you can't improve. So that first score is just clearly a benchmark, and that benchmark is if the second score is important because then you can see what your trend lines are as you go forward. So think about how you measure that, and obviously that's the quantitative part. The qualitative part we do through focus groups, or we do through text boxes where members can write, and it's very important that as you look at that, that you also follow up with those to confirm what they tell you through the numbers. And members given the opportunity will give you feedback. And if you take that feedback, tie that into your business plans yearly, create action plans, create measurable objectives that your staff can be held accountable for. It's the way that you develop your business plans through the use of the loyalty survey. So with that, Terry, let me open that up to any questions that we might have in the audience.
Hang on just one moment. I think we have a question. Can you flip back to that previous slide so that they have the chapter code words?
Yes.
There you go. And the code word this time is pumpkin pie. So you can see if you're Evergreen, Florida, Wisconsin, Upper Midwest, Golden State, or Mile High chapter, you can email those and they'll be submitted for CMA credit. Here's the question. Are your surveys boilerplate for all clubs, or are they customized to fit the particular characteristics of each club?
Yeah, we customize surveying for the clubs. We would want to ask boilerplate questions in order to benchmark your club against the rest of the industry. So one of the elements of benchmarking is what is your baseline, and certainly there's certain questions. So the way we develop our surveying is we do it through the managers and through the staff. We have basic questions that we like to ask, and you saw the format that we use that. But in every case, we're going to personalize our surveys because at the beginning, the first question we ask is, what do you want to know? So in order that's different for every club, and we personalize those surveys around the wants and the needs of the club. So great question there. If you are going to benchmark, you have to have standard questions. If that's your purpose, if that's not your purpose, then we personalize the surveys based on what your wants are.
Okay, next question. Can I receive a copy of the presentation to review with other managers at my club? We don't release the PowerPoint, but we did record the session. So we will be distributing a link to that recording in the next day or so. Question after that, what if your chapter is not listed? How do you receive questions? Great question, Tara. Reach out to your managing director and copy me, and we'll work that out. We started out with Florida chapter as the only one doing that, and others have caught on. So it's a nice way to pick up some education credits or some activity credits. Next question, how do you recommend we survey our members for their why?
So the first way that I would survey your members for the why is put together a focus group of members. We'd be more than happy to help you, but if you feel confident in doing that also, take the last 10 members who have joined your club, do a cocktail hour with them, and after they had a drink, put them in the room and go around the room and ask them why they joined the club. Through that information, develop the why for your club. It'll come forward very clearly on the why of why people have joined your club. Develop it through the members. Then I also recommend that you do a focus group of members that did not join your club and ask them the same question. And between that will give you the information that you'll want to focus on in the future in order to develop your own why.
Great. Next question, are millennials less loyal?
Great question. We actually have not studied that, so I cannot give you the answer to that. We do know that in terms of the millennials, that Generation X is more important from a membership standpoint, where the millennials are obviously more important from a staff standpoint. So loyalty, we do know that the millennials are more team orientated than the generation in front of them, and they operate differently. And we do know that the millennials, in terms of the vision of the why, is very important to them, of working for a cause. And so I think you can take that to your staff. We do staff engagement surveys, and we have a different survey from a membership loyalty survey from that. We have an employee net promoter score that we look at, and the boomers do answer higher in the net promoter score than the millennials do. And you can target that, and we can actually explain the variance in that and come up with programmings. There's many clubs that I can think of two right off the top of my head across the country that have changed the way that they've handled some of the millennials through our employee engagement survey. Mike Morin, who's in our office, is our insider expert in that, and he's had great success on improving the employee score, which is really the millennial part of that.
So, and just to add to that, there is a demographic component to the loyalty survey. So what Jim's saying is we haven't isolated millennials specifically, but we do capture demographic data so that you have an overview of your membership. Next question: how do you tell members what will be done with the information from a survey?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things that you do on that. Anytime that you ask your members for survey, you have to give that information back to them. So we give an executive summary of the survey back to the club, and many cases, in most cases, they would put that back up on the website. Secondly, the business plan should be developed from the survey, and those business plans should be part of the strategic planning of the club. So if you think about the strategic planning of the club, starts with the mission and the vision, then you go into core competencies, the core values of the club, and then the objectives of the club. Those objectives of the club many times are supplemented by the surveying, and you tie in your business plans to those, and then you generally would socialize those business plans to the members. We would recommend that you have a written business plan, that those written business plans, which are developed through the use of the survey, are shared with the committees and with the members. And it's our belief that through the use of giving the committees meaningful work, that meaningful work in the committees tie into the business plans of the club, which are tied to the surveying of the club. And then it becomes a continuous process improvement where you are continuously surveying your members on a repeatable basis. You benchmark those surveys, and each and every year you update your committee responsibilities through the use of your business plan.
Great. Okay, here's a nail hit right on the head. Many people are afraid to survey because it surfaces dissatisfactions and it creates expectation that things will change or improve.
Yes, and the answer to that is yes, it does. So you have to have a process of continuous improvement, and that's why many times what we see is the disconnect. And it's tough to do, right? Is that we do these satisfaction surveys or any surveys, and they sit on the table because it's not indoctrinated into the business processes of the club. In our point of view, you have to document your objectives and your goals, and the surveys have to be part of that. You have to hold your staff accountable. The way you hold your staff accountable is coming up with business plans that are documented, that everybody has agreed upon. It's not about getting the worst performance out of people or your members, or setting bad expectations, but setting great expectations of continuous improvement and meeting the needs of your members and figuring out ways to do that based on the information that they give you. I do not know of any great organization or business that doesn't have a process to get consumer feedback, and any club that thinks that by ignoring getting what the members wants and needs and not writing business plans off of those for continuous improvement, that's better than to keep it silent because you're afraid of what they might say, that does not change the outcome. So ignoring issues that you have in the club or setting expectations based on getting feedback from your members does not change outcomes, and we're here to change outcomes. And so if you're at a club and you want to change your outcome, you have to get member feedback. You have to recognize that. You have to stare it in the face, and then you have to have a process of continuous improvement that you can utilize that with your staff, with your committees, and with your board to make a difference. And the only way that we see that successful clubs from a best management practice do that is through the use of surveying that translates into the business plans, which translates into the strategic planning. It's a comprehensive tool. They're dependent upon each other, and they have to be continuous in order to advance the goods and services and loyalty of your members.
So I think that's it. That was the last question.
Okay. Well, we'd like to thank everybody on behalf of Terry and myself at Club Benchmarking. You can see my emails up there. If we can help you in any way, feel free to email or call us at Club Benchmarking. We're here to help you and to make a difference in your club. So thank you for joining today.